My name's Georgie Warman. I'm going to be speaking with Dan Gaba today at the Wall Street Journal. Dan has been advising me on my work for several years now, and he's got some great insights. So let's see what he has to say. Thanks.
My great aunt was a photographer in World War II. So she was a lot of things. She was a photographer, and then if she developed, and that's what she actually really liked. She liked being in the darkroom.
Yeah.
She would develop the reconnaissance film that the people would go out and take in the Pacific Theater. She was in the jungle in Borneo, I think, and they stayed up overnight, developed the film, read by moonlight, and then by 5 or 6 a.m. when the people were going on their bombing raids, her team would have been the ones who developed the film. But she was like 40 when she was in the army, and
Yeah.
everyone else was 20. And she wore trousers, and she smoked cigarettes, and she was divorced. And my mom idolized her, and she a 20-year-old guy fell in love with her. Her name is Agnes. His name was James Daniels. He was like 20 years old. She was 40, and she was like, "Please, I don't have time for this, or maybe I have a little time for this, but not like I don't want anything serious." And he was like, "Oh no, no, the one." Everybody hated her because they were like, "You're robbing the cradle. You're too old to have kids," all this kind of stuff. And then she felt guilty, and then he was like, "No, you're the one for me." And they loved each other very dearly, and they could never have kids. And I'm the fifth kid. By the time you have 5 kids, you are just, what do we call this kid? I am named after them because his nickname was Danny. She was cool, and she was extremely kind and supportive of my mom when a lot of people weren't. Like when she's a little girl, and she was like really sweet to her. And then my dad and my brothers had cameras. Photography was always cool and serious, and they had like Nikon cameras, and they would try to tell me how to use it, and it would be so intimidating, and I was afraid I was going to break it, and I was like, I don't know. And then my mom would have the cheapest Polaroid cameras or drugstore cameras, and I was always like, well, that's not serious or whatever. And then the older I've gotten, the more I've liked the camera machine a lot. And I like the fancy ones, but I feel like anybody can get a fancy one. And that's kind of what people think: the fancier my camera, the better my picture will be. And I'm always impressed by the crappier your camera and the ability to get an amazing shot. So that's a very long answer about how I don't love photography, but I love the people who I love the people in my life who were involved with photography. So I guess maybe that's it. And I've always had a big thing for like visual arts and stuff too. And I think of photography as one of those things. Well, I don't assign that often.
Mm-hmm.
I deal a lot with breaking news and the wires,
Yeah.
but I do assign sometimes, and I do get a photographer. I mean, no matter what, like a photographer who has a style
Yeah.
of their own. And when you're talking about the Wall Street Journal, it tends to be, this august um, institution. So it can be a bit conservative as far as the style of photography sometimes. So I want a person who can work with me. Like sometimes it's like, that'd be great if we had this really cool, weird, artsy portrait of somebody, but for our readers, for our audience, probably need something a bit more conventional. So I always like to tell somebody, I need like these 3 photographs. I have to have them, like an exterior shot, a portrait, and one other one. And then after that, I want you to go crazy and do everything you do and experiment and play and have fun. Um, and if we get to use those other things, fantastic. But I have to be able to say I've got these 3, so I can always have those, like, all right, if I can't sell this today, that. So I need a photographer who can work with me I
Yeah.
need a photographer who can, one, follow those types of instructions, but at the same time, report, find stuff out, find stuff. Because a lot of times a photographer is going to go there, either before or after the reporter.
Yeah.
And so they might find out some sort of information that the reporter didn't have. Like the subject might remember, oh, yeah, the reporter was here and I forgot to tell the reporter this or that. Or, the reporter did an interview at someone's office. And then for whatever reason, the portrait is at someone's home. And then it's like, wow, at their home, I saw all these details and we were able to see these things that they do or don't like, or that they display in their home, not in a creepy or snoopy way, but in a way that adds more context to the story, adds more value, because ultimately, to sell the photographs, a lot of times it's like, often the photographs can be seen as, sadly, it can be seen as just window dressing. It's like,
Mm.
I have to have just a picture here because somebody told me to. But if a photographer can really add something to the story that the reporter didn't know or have, or like, as a team, as a fellow reporter, as a visual reporter, that's great. And then if you could write an AP photo style caption, you can forget all the rest. If you can just, that's all I need. I need the name, I need it spelled correctly, I need the day, the date, I need the location. You'd be amazed by how many people can't do like the most basic thing. And what I always tell them is, like, imagine in 5 years, someone finds this photograph like blowing on um, London Bridge somewhere in a trash pile, and they pick it up. They better know who who's in the photograph, how to spell their name, who it was for, that kind of stuff. Just really extremely detailed. Just pay attention to that, and you can pre-write so much of that. But I need that for every single one.
Yeah.
That is so helpful. And if somebody gets that, it's like, great. That's just a big,
Fun.
helps all of us so much, because there's so many hands that get that photograph, and I'm not always available, and the photographer is not always available. So it's like, if you don't do that, one of us is going to have to call you at 3 a.m.
Mm.
and I don't want to do it, and you don't want the call at 3 a.m. And so if you don't want that, just do that part, and I'll try to do my part. And mistakes are made. We don't like those mistakes in captions, but um, there's a formula in certain parts of it that's boring, and the boring bits are extremely important. Extremely. Not every photo editor is going to be like that. I can only speak for me, but for me, a lot of times, for instance, of like, let's say a photograph comes in on Tuesday, and the story runs on Friday for the Saturday weekend thing. I'm not in on Friday, so I'll build all this stuff before, and I'll put everything in there and try to have everything wrapped up with a bow. Great. And then Friday night, a new copy editor is on it, and a new copy editor wants to know something about this or that. And then they have to call me, and then I have to call a photographer. But if that caption information is thorough, then they don't. It's just like, oh, okay, that's what that is. That's what that is. Or I need a picture of this person in front of this exact thing.
Mm-hmm.
Is that the exact thing in the background? Like a car that's mentioned in the story? Or is this their home?
Yeah.
Or is this like a friend's home? Because it's important for the story that it's about them in their home, that kind of stuff. Just a detail. Again, a boring thing that you'd be like, of course it is. And it's like, it's a week later, and someone who's not involved in the story at all is the last person before it gets, published.
Yeah.
And they need to know. So that's important. And then a lot of times, like, you have someone spell their name for you, because it's like, oh, it's James Smith. And it's like, yeah, but it's Smythe, and and then we have to run a correction because somebody's like, oh, it's Jane Smith. I know how to spell Jane Smith, and it's like, ah, you know, it's the little boring, like I said, boring details. That kind of stuff is really important. So if a photographer does that, also if a photographer does that, to me, that's a photographer who can get the small stuff and get it done correctly and get it out of the way. That way they free themselves to look around, find stuff out, but they're paying attention to detail at that point. And as a photographer, it's really helpful if you pay attention to detail. Like, wow, that person doesn't like when I'm in this room, so let's go over to this room because I want to make the person more comfortable. So it's like that's the kind of detail, because a lot of times the photographer is doing something that's like really invasive. They've got this lens pointing at somebody and the person doesn't want their photo taken or feels awkward or weird. And that photographer needs to be also the kind of person who can read the room and, speak with them so that everybody can be okay,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. Well, for me, again, I can only speak for myself. I don't care if you want to show me an expensive photo book that's beautifully printed and all that kind of stuff. Fantastic, because it's nice for you to present your best work to me in the way that you're most comfortable. But I would say for me, because I work in the news, the most important thing is I need to look at your work on a phone,
Okay.
because most likely that's how someone reading my publication is going to see it. Or your photos are going to be seen on your least favorite medium,
Yeah.
in the least favorite size. So that's why I'm like, it doesn't, it matters to a degree because it's nice to see, like I said, if you've got a way you want to present it. But that's more about you than me personally.
Mm.
Like I'm not like, oh my gosh, this person's photo book is terrible. They can't do good work for me. I would say if you're presenting me stuff, just for your sake and mine, it's good if you show me the best picture you've ever taken first.
Okay.
Like
Yeah.
don't let's not start slow and go up and literally hit me with your best shot.
Yeah.
Start with the shot the shot that you like, or the shot that got you the picture that got you hired somewhere or got you an award, the picture that you really love, that you just, no one's bought it or used it before, but it's your best work because that's the direction you're going.
Yeah.
So present me the best stuff that you have.
Yeah.
More and more for a daily publication, it'd be good for you to show it on a phone as well. Like we don't even have to be like personal one-on-one, but like if you were chatting with me and you were like, oh, you should look at my website, and that might, I'd be like, oh, I'll just grab my phone, and then if I can't do that,
Mm.
it's like, oh well, okay, because that's going to be a way that so many of us are interacting with the web is with
Absolutely.
the phone. So it's okay to have all the other stuff too, but the phone would be important.
Yeah.
So I didn't mean to cut you off there.
No, no. I was just going to say, with regards to portfolio, I've heard that start strong, strong one in the middle, and a strong one at the end. Do you agree with that?
I guess it all depends on the story you're telling. I
Yeah.
would say strong all the way through. Let's get rid of the other. How about this? Give me the 3 strong picks, and then if you have a pick that's weaker than those 3, there needs to be a reason why.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So, or how does this weaker picture progress your story?
Mm.
And what was the reason you interjected this weaker photo? And I would only say, like, don't worry so much if I think it's weak. Do you think it's weak? Are you presenting me a story where, like, don't look at the second one? Why is it in there?
Yeah.
Why, take that out. Take second picture out, and maybe I'll say, oh, by the way, I don't know if the second or the 5th picture works here. That's fine. That's just like an opinion. But for you,
Yeah.
you should be presenting me. If you've only got 3 picks in a story, then that's all you got.
Yeah.
And that's fine. I don't want you to show me like 20 photos and you only like 4 of them.
No, 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 no.
Yeah. So how about that? Start strong,
Stay
be
strong.
strong in the middle, finish strong. Don't put any stuff in between. And also, when you're presenting to a photo editor, a lot of times you and they do not have a lot of time.
No.
So again, you don't want to waste time with pictures that you don't like. To me, that's the most important. Uh, I think, like I was talking to you before, for me, if you've ever published with someone else, it's important to see that, because to be honest, it's like, oh, such and such publication took a chance on you and you did well. I haven't heard this person was so bad and they burned down the other publication. That's a good sign. But so and so used you and they presented it well, and there you are, and maybe you won an award, something like that. Like, so your strongest, I don't want to say most prestigious, but the one that you're most proud of, like published work or awarded work.
Mhm.
But then ultimately I do want to see your personal projects, because that's who you are.
Yeah.
Anybody can use a camera, and it's a machine, and it wouldn't be that hard for everybody to take the same kind of picture. But when you've got a story that you're really impassioned about, and in fact, the weirder the better, and if it has any semblance of joy in it, the better, because often photographers are trying to be serious, so therefore those have to be sad stories. Sad stories need to be told and should be told. That's fine.
Mm.
I have no problem with that in any way. But if you are like, oh, this one's silly, it's about this, for me, show me the silly one, because no one shows me the silly one. Now, I want that silly one to be good, or say it's a work in progress and I'm playing with this, but I've always been obsessed with this thing or fascinated with that, or it's a story that I'm just working on and I don't have an ending for it. Fine, that's your personal work. But I'm looking for your eye, your composition, um, whatever you're bringing to the story. I want to see that, because I'll be hiring you. I'm not hiring your camera. And also, leave it to me sometimes to be like, I do this kind of thing, and it's like, oh, well, you wouldn't think of it, but that's really similar to sports photography. You would have a really interesting take on sports photography. I'd like to try you for that, or something,
Yeah.
where it's like, maybe I could connect some dots a little bit too. But I really want to see your personal stuff, and I want to see the weird stuff. I want to see the stuff that you're like, I love this, but I don't think anyone else would. That's what I want to see personally,
Yeah.
because then I know, like, what are you taking a chance on? What are your thoughts? What are you doing? And also, if it's not for me, it might be the kind of thing where I'm like, hey, I can't use this, but I know an editor who could.
Yeah.
And maybe at my publication, or maybe it's someone else, another publication. I was like, this is great. I don't know where it goes either, but you should stay with this because you're doing something really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, I want to see your personal stuff. But if you're trying to get hired by me or by my publication, I would say a good place to start would be anything you've published that you're proud of and that's in a publication, an award. And then, yes, please show me your personal stuff. I guess photo editors hire who they know, just like a lot of people do. So try to get to know them. It's okay to reach out. I would say if you reach out and just flat out say, hire me, that's a bit much. I don't know who you are, what's going on. Um, Hold on a second. Okay, we got, and then it's like I'm working on daily deadlines. So it's like, I don't know, do I have time? Do you have time? What's going on?
Yeah.
That comes off as a little aggressive. If you, I would say this for someone, I say this to people, and sometimes people do it and it works. It can take a lot of work, but sometimes, sadly, photographers have a lot of time on their hands. And I would just say, this is something you could do that would allow you some agency. So let's say you go to a magazine stand and you look at the newspaper, you just pick out the newspapers and the magazines you actually like, that you would actually like to be and work with. the ones that you don't think you have any chance with, the ones that you think are so cool that your stuff would never fit there. Pick out the ones you actually like. And then open them up and look at the masthead, and you'll see who the photo editors are, the director of photography, even the assistant photo editors, and so on. That's very important. Um, Look them up and follow them on Instagram and follow them on Twitter. And you'll start seeing what they do. And also look at that publication, look at their website, look at their mobile site, look at their printed publication if they have it. Let's get a vibe. What do they do? What kind of work do they do? Why do you like it? Why do you not like it? Follow those people. The people you follow after a week or a few weeks, there'll be some people who stick out that you're like, I like the way this person thinks visually, or they're funny, or they're, they sound like they might be a bit aggressive. I don't know if I want to deal with them. You'll start making a bit of you'll start finding your tribe a little bit, and you'll like just cut the people out that you have no interest in. Focus on the people that, again, you like their work, because a lot of times, photo editors don't have their names on their work a lot of times. So a lot of times in social media, a photo editor might say, like, I'm really proud of this work that this photographer did, and we did it together, and it was great, and here it is, and it's like, great. Then you can know the photographers they're using. You'll know the work they're proud of. You'll see the work they've done. You'll see that's work they're proud of. Could I fit into what they're doing? Also, I'm this kind of photographer. I want to shoot this type of thing. They don't shoot that at all. So, or they don't work like, I want to do breaking news, but they're in arts. So it would be hard for me to present to them because it's different. We can still, like each other's work, but you'll start seeing like these people seem to be people I could pitch to. And then when you pitch to them, you could say, I love the work you did. That stuff that you did with this photographer and that photographer that you put out, because you'll have seen it on social or in their publication. You're like, I really thought it was great. I'm so glad that that photographer is getting work. It's wonderful. Just wanted to reach out and say hi. And it's okay to just compliment. And I bet you most photo editors would be floored that you knew who they were, that you actually had a constructive thing to say, like a compliment about the work they've done, that they're like, someone's paying attention out there. Great, thank you. And then also you could ask fellow photographers the editors they like, and also at the same time don't like. It's like, I don't like this photo editor. They don't do this well, or whatever. Or I like this photo editor. They're good, or I work well with them. And then you can ask them for introduction. An introduction from a person I have employed before is big. I'll automatically look. If someone says, hey, hey, we know each other. By the way, just saying you should look at so-and-so's work. And that doesn't have to be anything related. That could be nothing related to me in any way, as far as what I cover. And I'll say, oh, okay, well, I trust you. You and I work well together. And if you say this photographer is worth looking at, I'll absolutely look at them. And it's like, oh, I can't use them, but I'll send it over to so-and-so. And when I do, I'll say, this comes with a recommendation from a person who's worked with us and has done really well by us. So it's automatically bumped up.
Wow.
And again, when you're reaching out to like cold calling people or stuff, I'd recommend they'll get a lot of emails. Sometimes that works, but you get hundreds of emails a day sometimes. But a direct message in Twitter, or a direct message, because a lot of journalists are on Twitter, or a direct message in Instagram could be a way to do it. I think most people will ignore you. Some people will, and don't take that personally. They're just got a lot of stuff, and maybe for whatever reason you all don't jibe that day or whatever. Hopefully, when you've done a little research, you'll find this person never responds to people, but it's okay to say a nice thing to them. Or this person says they can't work with me, but it's my in with that publication. So that's good. And a lot of times, like I tell people, because I don't assign that much, like keep me up to date with what you're doing, because sometimes I do, but I do also hear that other people are assigning, and there somebody might, one of the photo editors might say, oh, I need somebody in this place in this town that can do such and such. Does anybody know anybody? And I'll be like, yeah, I actually been talking with this person for a few months. I've never had a chance to work with them, but they seem great. And then they're already signed up to our contract and, that kind of thing. So it can be a long way around to go. And not everybody wants to do that because ultimately you're not going to get paid that much money for that amount of work. But keeping in touch with photo editors, following their work, talking to them, checking in with them if they ask you to check in. Because a lot of times it's like, just get back to me in a month and let me know what you're doing. And also, if you can show me that you're not waiting for me to give you permission to do the work, if you're doing the work with me or without me, that's great. Because then I don't feel guilty of like, well, this person would go shoot this thing if I ever got off my butt and did it. It's like, I don't have the budget. I don't have the time. That's not even what I cover. Uh, but I could just tell somebody, it's like, they did this amazing thing. They shopped it around. Nobody wanted it. So they made a zine, and then they put it out, and they put it out just like they wanted. And it looks great. Or they made this really cool, bizarre website, or something, or they made it into, they made something with it. They asked if we wanted to be part. We didn't have an opportunity to use it. So they just thanked us and went our way, or went their way. And then it's like, that's great. I'm so happy for you. That's awesome. So that's helpful. The standard rate is 400 US dollars a day. That could be changed and be a little different if special circumstances. I've never had those special circumstances really myself. But at the same time, we'll speak with you about uh, any sort of cost, like travel cost, or if it's a long day thing, like food, um, um, transportation, like to and from the train station or whatever. Absolutely. We'll just want to negotiate that before we actually figure it out. Like, you don't know what your meal's going to cost. Fine. Just don't go crazy and get some bizarre, super expensive meal. But at the same time, it's like, we want you to be able to keep going. So have a meal. Don't mess up the shoot because you're having a really nice fancy meal or something. But please have a meal. And also, like, I know I don't want somebody to be taking like heavy and expensive photography equipment, and then they're like walking it around and they don't want to, and they feel unsafe in an area. It's like, no, get a car.
Yeah.
Like, either rent a car or get an Uber or a taxi. Like, take care of yourself, and like, let's walk through this, and we'll pay for all of that stuff. And we just don't like to be surprised after the fact.
Yeah.
Sometimes that happens, but it's like, whoa, you took a flight? Like, what? We didn't talk about that at all. So it tends to be, at least for me, 400 US dollars a day. And if it's a 1 hour shoot, $400. If it's a 12-hour shoot, well, not 12. It's like after a certain amount of time, then it becomes time and a half.
Right.
But if it's all day, like 8 hours, it's 400 US dollars. So uh, it compares pretty favorably with a lot of news outlets, but it's not like advertising money,
No.
that kind of stuff. So hopefully we also pay, and this is, you can't pay your rent with this, but hopefully the prestige of the Wall Street Journal brand helps with you as well, and also helps you get work going forward. Like, that could be kind of part of your pedigree of like, she's done this, and she's also worked with the Wall Street Journal, and then that might help you get an advertising campaign or something because someone's seen that you've done work with us. Again, you can't pay your rent with that. Totally aware, but generally that's what we pay. I'm not sick, and my family is good and healthy, and
Good.
my friends and loved ones healthy. Um, and I currently have a job, and I can afford my rent and all that kind of stuff. So I feel extremely thankful for all those things, and I feel very bad for anybody who is suffering right now in any way,
Mm.
especially related to this. Um, and at the end of the day, it's been so overwhelming because we're all working from home. Um, and one thing I've done is just like meditation.
That's really
Uh, yeah, running. I like to have a run every like basically every other day if I can. That really helps me like either be both physically tired at the end of the day instead of just mentally wound up. And it also I don't run with headphones.
oh, really?
So yeah, because I don't want it's like when I'm running, it's a way for me to be a kind of a wakeful or a eyes open meditation. I just let the thoughts come in the left ear and out the right, or in the right ear and out the left. And if I had headphones in, I'd be listening to news or someone else's thoughts or interpretations of the world. And I'm like, I just want like an hour to not
Yeah.
think about that, listen to my body. Like, oh, my leg hurts. I need to lean off of it a little and use the other one, or it's like, oh, maybe I should stop. Or actually, I'm doing better than I thought I was. I can keep going. And I want that concentration.
Yeah.
And when I come home from that, that allows me to have a space and it allows me to be a little more creative. And then I've got a bunch of film cameras and the past week or two, I've been like, oh yeah, I have film in that one. I have film in that one. I should shoot that
Mhm.
roll. And I develop here and scan here as well. That's fun. I haven't developed a lot, but I have gone through some roles, and so I'll do that. But I like I like shooting people on the street a lot of times, so I haven't quite been able to do that. So I've been trying to think out of my own self-imposed box and what else can I take a picture of? And so that's challenging,
Yeah.
uh, good challenging. But then sometimes the creative thing is like, I know a creative thing. How about I just let myself rest? How
Yeah.
about how about I don't put pressure on myself to create the next wonderful, beautiful work or amazing this, that, or the other? How about I sleep? I cook food. I take care of myself. I check in on people. Um, and that can help feed a little space in my mind and body and physical location to where I can then take a breath, get outside of me for a little bit, and then have some energy when I come back.
Yeah.
And so I try to do that, but I'm not trying to do anything like super specific, like I'm writing a book or
No, no.
anything like that. I'm not that ambitious today.
I don't think anyone is. I think that's okay. Cool. Well, that was all my questions, Dan. Thank you so much. That was
Okay,
really helpful.
great.
Thank you. Yeah, and keep well, and I'm sure I'll talk to you soon.
Okay, sounds good. Please keep in touch, and thanks for letting me talk with you. It's been really great.
Thank you, Dan. I'll speak to you soon.
Alrighty, bye bye.
Bye.